Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Ka-50 Black Shark 3 in DCS, but first let's start with a little bit of history. During the 1970s, the Soviet Union would begin looking into procuring its first single-role attack helicopter. Prior to this, they had the Mi-24 in service as their primary attack helicopter. However, this also has a secondary role as a transport helicopter, being able to carry 8 troops. The design requirements for this purpose-built attack helicopter would be given to the two largest helicopter design bureaus in the Soviet Union, this being Mil and Kamov. Mil's design would later become the Mi-28, which would also enter service with the Russian aerospace forces in the 2000s, whereas Kamov's design would become the Ka-50, which would enter service in 1995. While the Ka-50 was the first to enter service, it wasn't necessarily a successful design, with only about 30 or so being built. And while a few of these airframes did see combat, their main use was as trials aircraft. It is pretty clear to me that the Ka-50 was just too radical of a design for an attack helicopter, and this can be shown in what has become its real legacy in the Ka-52, which is a more traditional evolution of the Ka-50 design. And with that brief history lesson out of the way, let's get into what the helicopters are actually like.
The Ka-50 is an extremely unique attack helicopter with two major differences from a regular helicopter, and especially a regular attack helicopter. The first major difference being that it has no tail rotor. Instead, it relies on a twin coaxial main rotor blade. What this means for you as the pilot is that the helicopter is quite nimble. Despite it being very heavy, it doesn't feel like that when you're piloting it. In fact, you'd be forgiven for thinking that you were piloting something much lighter, like just a scout helicopter, and not a heavily armed attack helicopter. The other major deviation from the norm is it only has a single seat. This means that as the pilot you have a lot going on, but the Ka-50 compensates for this by having hold modes and an autopilot. Inside the cockpit it's a mixture of new and old. Front and centre you have the Skral screen, and next to it a really large MFD, and up top you have a modern HUD. However,
this is mixed with plenty of steam dials and enough buttons and switches to make things extremely confusing.
Now let's get on to the more interesting part. Weapons and sighting systems. As previously mentioned, the Ka-50 has the Shkval, I believe it's pronounced like that, apologies if I've got it wrong. This is a pretty decent sighting system, and to be honest with you, it mostly reminds me of the sighting system on the SU-25T, so if you're familiar with what that looks like, very similar. Additionally to this, the Ka-50 has a very simple helmet-mounted sight. Move your head and you press a button, and then that moves the Shkval to where you're looking. That's all it does, but it's better than nothing. And on to weapons. The Ka-50 has a 30mm semi-rigid autocannon. This basically means that the cannon is able to move up and down freely, but only has a very small amount of left and right travel. The aircraft is equipped with up to 4 Strela air-to-air missiles. These are short-range self-defense missile. You'll already be aware of these missiles because they're used as man-pads, so you've probably already been shot down by them a couple of times. The good thing about these on the Ka-50 is that they're only available on the edge pylons and nothing else can go on them, so you're not wasting ground attack potential by carrying these missiles. On pylons 1 and 4 you have available your edge ground missiles. These come in two varieties for the Ka-50, either the 9M127 Vickers or the Ka-25ML. We'll start with the Vickers. You can carry 12 of these missiles, and they're anti-tank guided missiles. They're okay, they're not very long range, they're not super accurate, and they don't do a lot of damage. The fact that you can carry 12 of them on 2 pylons somewhat makes up for that. On the other hand, you have the KH-25MLs, or NATO designation AS-10 Karens. These are 300 kilogram warheads, and they're semi-active laser guiding. These are much longer range and a lot stronger. They'll demolish most things, but again, you can only carry 1 on each pylon, so a total of 2. Following on from the missiles, we have something unique to the Russian aircraft, and that's the ability to carry bombs. You can carry 250 kilo bombs, 500 kilo bombs, and cluster bombs. You can carry up 4 of each, 1 on each pylon. I'm not entirely sold on helicopters carrying bombs. I believe that this is something left over from the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the 80s, where hides were used to bomb Mujahideen hideouts. However, to me this seems like something that was very specific to that era and that area of fighting. I don't really see the purpose in modern warfare, or in DCS by extension. I especially don't see the point in carrying cluster munitions. You certainly do not want to be that close to an armoured column or even infantry that you're dropping cluster bombs. That's why you have the Vickers, so you can stand off and engage. Next up, we have the twin 23mm autocannon pods. You have up to 4 of these available to you, 1 on each pylon. These will absolutely shred lightly armoured vehicles, infantry or aircraft on the ground, but you do have to be close to use them. Last but not least, we have rockets. You either have the option of 122mm rockets or 80mm rockets. You can carry up to 20 of the 122mm rockets on 4 stations, or up to 80 of the 80mm rockets.
So now let's summarise why you might want to fly the helicopter in DCS. First off, if you're a single player, then this is a great helicopter for you. You can do everything on your own. You haven't got to worry about using the sometimes lackluster AI that comes with the Mi-24 or the AH-64. Next up, we have the fact that the helicopter is fairly simple to learn. While it may look intimidating at first because there's so much going on in the cockpit, once you get over that, actually using the aircraft and using the weapon systems is a breeze. This brings me on to the fact that the Ka-50 has a wide arsenal of weapons. No matter what you want to do, as long as it's destroying something, you've got the tools for the job. And if you overextend yourself, then you've got the maneuverability and the speed to get out of those tricky situations. To summarise in 3 words, I'd say solo, lethal, and agile. Because you're alone, you're dangerous, and you're manoeuvrable. Thank you for watching. Apologies that this has been so long since my last video, but this was initially meant to be a much longer multi-aircraft video. However, it just got too in the weeds and too long and not interesting enough. So hopefully back to the regularly scheduled of every couple of weeks. Again, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed, subscribe, like, comment. I'm always up for a good chat about DCS, specifically the Ka-50 or anything else about it really.